Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of In Conversation with Evolving HR. This week, I'm joined by June Hogan from Wildwood Coaching. June is a specialist in outplacement, coaching and outplacement services. And for those of you that don't know what outplacement is, it's a really interesting area. I would call it HR adjacent, wouldn't you, June? Yeah.
Yeah, an extension to the
I
HR. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the support that is offered to people when they find themselves in usually a redundancy situation. I'm sure June will correct me if it gets offered in other situations as well, but I have been offered outplacement on the one time that I got made redundant. Didn't happen the second time, but the first time it did. And my experience of it was not very positive. And I think one of the issues around it is that there are a lot of big organizations providing fairly generic cookie cutter approaches to outplacement. And one of the things I love about June is that she doesn't do that. It's not cookie cutter. I'll give you an example where I remember going to one of the sessions that I had been provided with, and they were supposed to be providing you with support on job seeking, getting back out in the market again, looking for another job. And when was this? It would have been about 2008. So it's quite a long time ago. It doesn't feel like quite a long time ago, but it was. And I remember them saying, and you can use the internet to look for a job. And I remember sitting there with my head in my hands, just thinking, yeah, I think we know that. So it at the time it felt very dated. It didn't feel particularly helpful. I also got the impression that the person that I was assigned to didn't understand what I did or the sorts of roles that I might be wanting to look for. So my experience of it was not particularly positive. I went along because the company was paying for it and I thought, why not? But it wasn't something that I found particularly useful. So what I'd love to talk to June about today is the flip side of that, how it can be incredibly useful and how it is something that is so beneficial to employees when they find themselves in that situation. So, June, let's start off with what made you get into this in the first place? Because you haven't always been self-employed, but what was it that made you want to focus on outplacement when you set up your business?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I didn't go into it to start with. I was just a coach. And we know that everyone's a coach these days, aren't they? So that kind of wasn't written as a business strategy. And it was just because I'd returned from living overseas. I'd had a career break. Life was kind of quite busy and chaotic. And so I was trying to kind of go into self-employment, but not really with a plan or a strategy. So it took me a while, and it was reflection, really. I was reflecting on both my experiences of redundancy, neither of which were supported by outplacement. I was reflecting on when I had to make redundancies during my HR career, and then the fact that I'd recently trained to be a coach. And I just had this moment of, well, I could bring all those three things together and specialize in something. So, create the niche, as we're kind of told to do, aren't we, when we're looking at self-employment. And it really feels like it's what I've meant to do. I know that sounds a bit like cliched, but I really genuinely feel like this is what I was meant to do, because it's not to say because I've been through redundancy, I know what anyone's going through, because you never do. But I do have that shared connection and that empathy with people. And I just love this because I know it makes a difference, and that's one of my values, and I feel so strongly about it. And when I'm in the room with people or working online or working with the team, it's all about making a difference to people at what can be a difficult time in their lives, and feeling like we can step in, make a difference, and step out again, and off they go. So that's what really matters to me, and what kind of made me feel like I could bring all those things together.
Do you know, I love that. And I think that empathy and also the coaching skills and that coaching approach is often missing. I think a lot of outplacement focuses on purely practical solutions. And I've been through redundancy a couple of times myself. You have too. It doesn't matter how strong a person you think you are. It does have an impact on you emotionally. It's very hard, isn't it, to immediately accept that it was a business decision. It was not a personal decision. It feels like the most blooming personal decision in the world when it happens to you. And so I'm assuming that some of what you bring to your clients is some understanding and holding space for them while they're kind of processing the whole emotion of it, because they're not going to be ready immediately to, I'm going to update my CV the day after I've been let go. And just tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, because I still say, and you've said it there, when I was made redundant, we all know it's roles that are made redundant, not people, but it never feels like that. And yes, the more you can separate yourself from the fact it was a business decision and it was the role and it wasn't you, that is the way that people can start to move forward. But people aren't ready for that when they're in the early days. And one of the things that I do when I'm coaching, or if someone's working with one of the team, is we just meet people where they're at. So wherever they are is where we'll start. And that, for me, you said before, isn't about, right, here we are, session 1, right, off we go. This is what we're going to be talking about today. It's more, okay, just tell me where you're at. Tell me how you're feeling. What's going on for you? And that's where we'll begin. And there's no judgment there. If somebody is just all over the place, quite often people are quite emotional. Or you might have someone at the other end of the spectrum that's like, right, I'm ready to go. I want to be a finance manager. That's what I've always done. Can you just help me get to that point? Okay, that's what we can do. So that's what I find interesting, because having done this since 2019, somebody on the outside looking in might think, well, is that not a bit boring? You're working with people who present in the same situation. But for me, it's not their situation. It's who's this person in this situation. That's what I need to understand. And then we can start to work out what's going to help you. So that's the position that I kind of come at it from.
I can't imagine that it would be boring, simply because we all react so differently to different situations. So you're going to have that whole spectrum of responses and emotions. And I love that whole idea of starting where they're at. It's one of those things, isn't it, that seems such a simple and obvious place to start, but is missed by so many people.
Yeah, because you could just kind of roll in. And what I say to people and not everybody who works with us will have coaching support. Sometimes, according to the budget, they might have some more practical support. We still approach that with a coaching approach. And I'll say, we've got this time together. We can use that in whatever way is going to be helpful for you. For some people, they need structure, so they want me to suggest things, and I'm happy to do that. But for others, it's just that relief of, I've come through a process and I've been processed, because redundancy is a process. And, no matter how hard we try, and there's so many HR professionals out there doing wonderful work, people will still feel processed. And so what I don't want them to feel is that they've just come out of one process and been dropped into another one. This is about them. So that's how I hope that we make a difference in the way that we approach things for people. And the feedback that we get is that people say, I felt like I had someone working alongside me. I felt like I had a friend after me. We're not there to rescue anybody, but they just need to know that they've got someone who is going to partner with them during what can be a turbulent time.
Yeah. And why do you think some organizations are prepared to, put a budget towards this kind of support and others aren't?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And often I think it goes back to values. So, values that are properly lived within an organization, they show up even in challenging times, rather than, well, we've got them on a board and they're nicely laminated, and we did a big rollout for people 5 years ago, but we've forgotten about them.
Nobody knows what they are. Yeah,
there's 12 of them and we can't remember them. So I often do find, so I do quite a lot of work with charities. They have budget constraints. I get that. So we will do what we can when we're working with charities, and organisations. I just get that sense that people genuinely care. So they don't just want to offer outplacement support because it's a tick box thing. And people and organisations who are in quite difficult financial circumstances, they'll still want to put some support aside. So like factory closures, for example, that's a difficult time. And yet there's still the opportunity to recognise that for lots of people, and we know from working with people, some people have never had to look for a job, like ever, because they just got tapped on the shoulder. And so I've got, senior clients that I've worked with, and people might think, oh, well, they'll be fine, because they're a 6-figure salary and, maybe make assumptions about people. But actually, quite a lot of those people have never, they haven't even got a CV because they just got tapped up, and people just, conversations in car parks and things like that,
Yeah. That's a good point, actually. And there are some industries still that have real longevity. So, I mean, my husband did 30 years at Royal Mail.
Wow.
And he's got a friend that still works there who's coming up to 32. And it's amazing that that still happens. Like in our parents' generation, the concept of a job for life was exactly that. It's much less common nowadays. How would you say, I mean, do you have a mix of people who have been through multiple redundancies and people who have never been in this situation before? That must be quite a different challenge that presents.
Yeah. And I'll always ask, is this your first time? Have you experienced it before? And there's one client who said, 9 times in the last 12 years.
Oh, the poor soul.
Yes. So, I mean, part of me was, well, we can reflect on what worked last time, what did you find was helpful? What would you like to do differently? So it's useful if someone has experienced it before. Again, it depends how long ago, and what the experience was like. But yes, multiple. I mean, that I was the same as you. I was like, oh, crikey.
That's some real bad luck, isn't it? 9 times.
Yes. And then others who've never been through it. And there's that real difference for people. So I do work with senior clients who will say, I've got a year. I don't need to work for a year. We know how it goes, settlement agreements, etc. That's fine. Because it takes a lot longer to find a senior role. So, to be fair, it won't take you 3 months. It might take you 6 or 9 months. So that year's salary might seem generous, but actually that's the reality of the market. And then I work with other people who will say, I have to find a job within the next couple of months for financial reasons. And some people, because their personal circumstances are that they've never not worked. And that psychologically, they don't need to work financially, but psychologically they need to work because they're on their own. They may be the main breadwinner, all these different things. So people they share lots with us, which I'm always grateful for. And I do respect that. But it's helpful for us to know that a little bit of the context, because as you say, everyone is different.
What would you say is, I mean, how would you kind of sell the value of outplacement to an organization? I know that, I mean, when you were saying before about why some companies do it and some companies don't, the word that kept coming into my head was the caring thing. And with the exception of the one company where I was offered outplacement, none of the companies I ever worked for ever offered it to anybody. But that was financial services, and that's a tricky industry. And also, I'm going to be very cynical now. I can't help it. It's 25 years in that industry. A lot of the redundancies were put through as redundancies, even though it wasn't about the role. It was, we've got to cut. I mean, people come into us and go, got to cut 20% of headcount. So you all got to go through and cut 20% of headcount. You decide who's going. It's very hard in those situations for people to accept that it was about the role and not me, because they'd either do last in, first out, or they do the poor performers. And so it kind of was about them. But they never offered outplacement. Even some of the bigger investment banks that I worked at, I didn't work for anyone who offered that. It was just kind of dump them and let them get on with it. But yeah, how would you kind of talk an organization into the benefit of that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess depending on the culture, as you say, people might think at one end, oh, well, it's just outplacement, it's just being nice to people, isn't it? And why would we invest money in people who are leaving? So that's the cynical side of it.
Yeah.
But there are benefits to the organization in terms of protecting your company brand, protecting your reputation. We know what small world it is. People talk after they've left. You're potentially creating that image for future hires, Well, if that's how they treat people when they leave, then maybe I'm not going to join. There are benefits to the HR team. You'll know what it's like, and I've been through this as well. You're managing a process, you're wanting to support people. There are only so many hours in the day. You just can't spread yourself too thinly. And actually, outplacement support makes a huge difference after people have left. And clearly, the HR team can't, or the talent team, if you're using the internal guys, they just can't offer that support. And it allows the HR team to focus on supporting line managers and actually thinking about the new organisation and getting that embedded, because that these people are going to be looked after. And the benefits to those people who are remaining, they see what you're doing, they notice the way you're treating people. So you just described there, you've got to cut 20% of people. The 80% who are left are watching all of this. And those people who can leave, who are your high performers, who know they can get another job, then they might decide, well, actually, I don't want to stick around here because the way they handled that restructure was pretty poor. And if that was me, I wouldn't want to be here. So it can impact on retention. It's a business benefit. There are so many commercial benefits to offering it, and it doesn't have to cost thousands of pounds. The support needs to be meaningful for it to make a difference to people, and also you're managing the lasting impressions of an organisation, and I never take that lightly, because that's essentially what we're doing. And while somebody who's offered it in a consultation meeting isn't necessarily going to go skipping out the meeting going, oh, that's wonderful, thank you so much, I'm so grateful. In time, they will look back and go, actually, that was a difficult situation. They did the right thing for me. And they will be able to look back and see that employer more positively than if you just let them go. But there are still so many organisations that don't offer it, either because they don't know about it, or because they think it's too expensive, or because they just don't want to do it. Which is a shame, because I know what a difference it makes to people. And that point of, well, if this was you or your sister or your friend or your brother or whoever, what would you want in that situation? Because we never know, and redundancies are so commonplace now. As you say, when we started in the world of work, well, that was it, job for life, off you go. You weren't expected to work anywhere else, were you?
No, gosh, absolutely. And it's one of those things as well, isn't it, that it was almost frowned upon if you moved about too often, whereas I think nowadays, I don't know, I feel like 2 years is a pretty good innings in an organisation. If somebody wants to move on for their own career development after 2 years, there is still an older generation that will frown upon that and say, well, they've got no staying power. But I think most people now recognise that that's how you get on. You have to keep developing your skills. You don't want to sit doing the same thing for 8, 9, 10 years. And so I don't know, the whole world of work has changed, hasn't it, in the last, since I've been working, it's changed massively. But so what sort of, the other thing I was going to mention is you've now got sites like Glassdoor, which we didn't have 20 years ago. So in terms of reputation and talking about how they were treated by a company, if they come away from an organization feeling really disgruntled and like they haven't been treated kindly or fairly, they're more likely to leave that review on Glassdoor, and then it's there forever for people to see. So that whole reputational piece, they've got that opportunity to say that now, whereas they didn't 15 years ago. So
no, absolutely. And I do think that people in time, and we ask for feedback at the end of each assignment, and I always remember we got some feedback from this one individual, and they said, offering this support has been hugely helpful, and I know that my employer did the right thing. And that was in their review, that they wrote that for us. Do you know what I mean? As in, they recognise that this was the right thing for them to do in that situation. And that's what makes me realise, makes you realise, probably the wrong word, but that's what really connects with me, because we know it's the right thing to do for people. And this could happen to you. And nobody is immune from being made redundant. I mean, years ago, I carried the shame of redundancy because I was made redundant probably 2005. I mean, people weren't made redundant back then. No, you how did you end up being made redundant? But this happens. And so I think to help people with the transition, it's not just about, yes, we've helped you move on and you found another role, but unpacking some of that emotion, and particularly the shame, which I see a lot even now with people.
I know that I felt that massively. I felt ashamed. I felt that despite the fact that there were quite clearly too many people doing roles too similar and they didn't need them all, it
Yeah.
still felt like I remember thinking, I must be rubbish. I must be rubbish, and this is embarrassing. And I remember my mum saying, "Don't tell anyone you got let go." I thought, what
Really?
am I supposed to tell them then? I'm not going to lie.
Yes.
But again, my mum is going to be 80 in October. So, and this was
Yeah.
sort of 10, 15 years ago, but that was the attitude before, wasn't it? But I
Mm.
mean, I'm intrigued by sort of how do you start with somebody who has been in an organization for 20, 30 years or has never looked for another job, hasn't got a CV? Where do you start with that person?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, one of the things that I'll say to them is it's completely okay that if you don't have a CV or you've been in the one organization, I'll kind of help to normalize that with them and say, because we see people like this all the time. So there's nothing, again, they've got enough shame going on with redundancy, never mind thinking they have a CV. So again, it's about meeting where they're at. And so what we would then do in that situation before we start looking at the CV is thinking, okay, so what is it that you want to do next? What do you want to do more of? What do you want to do less of? What does that role look like? So lots of reflection for them, because that will help inform what we put on the CV, and I've got CV writers who do great work in that respect, but also for them to know what they're looking for, because that also helps to inform where they're going to start. So, and that opportunity for people to pause and reflect, they find that hugely valuable. And for someone to, as you know, in a coaching space, you're listening, you're supporting them, you're asking the questions, and often it goes in lots of different directions, as you might assume. But first of all, it's about pausing really before we're rushing into kind of, let's start at the top with your name and then we'll work down the CV. It's kind of, we almost like put that to one side and we start with a blank piece of paper.
I love that. And you think if somebody was trying to navigate that alone, it's difficult to do that self-reflection without anybody there to guide you on the things to think about. That must be so tough. That must be so tough. Like, okay, I haven't been for an interview in 25 years. The whole world of work has changed. Where do I start? I mean, that must be very tough for people. So do you do all of your work one-to-one with people, or are there group sessions? So if you were doing like a number of employees in the same organization, do you do group sessions as well, or is it all one-to-one?
Yeah, no. So the most of our work is one-to-one, but with organized, so I'm doing a factory closure, for example. So I'm going up there for 3 days, and I'm just doing 3 one-day workshops with people. So depending on the size and the scale, so we can do in person. We've got online workshops, and then there's the kind of digital offering, which is where people can come to group coaching every couple of weeks, and they've got a digital program that they can work through. So there's lots of different options and price points that people can access outplacement support. But all of them have a human element. So the digital course, which I launched in January, it would have been easier and more cost effective not to have group coaching in there, but I really wanted people to have some connection, because as you say, when you've been made redundant, it's difficult to do this stuff on your own. It is, even with an online program, it's probably still quite hard, but easier. So people do still have that connection. So for me, it is about the connection that people get through the process, and no matter how they might engage with it.
Did you imagine, when you originally decided you wanted to do this, did you imagine that it would get to the point that it is now, where you've got people working with you and CV writers and things like that?
Yeah, no. And I've never been someone who's like chased things. But even in my corporate career, I never sort of chased the next job or chased a promotion. Things kind of just grew organically and kind of happened, I guess. That's just my approach. And so, I do. It took me a while to get my head around the fact that I'm a businesswoman. This is a real thing. I'm not just
You absolutely are,
self-employed. And I think it's that identity thing, because I never had this as it wasn't on my bucket list. I was quite happy in the job that I had, and it was just circumstances that brought me to this point. So it sometimes does feel a bit strange, but I love it. And all the ups and downs of running a business, as you'll know, yes, they're there, but ultimately I always come back to the fact that when I'm in a room with people or online, and you might close down a call, and I think to myself, this is why you do what you do, because you make a difference, and that is what matters. And that's what I was
that's ever so fulfilling. Do people stay in touch with you after their kind of program's finished? Do people update you that they've found something, or that they've had a good interview, or things like that?
Yeah. So some people will let us know, that they found the job. I love that when we get that, when that pops in. Lots of people that we work with, particularly on our 3 and 6 month programs, they will find something during the time that they're with us, which is wonderful. Yeah. Some of the shorter programs, it's harder to do that. So yeah, they do keep in touch, and we're a small business, so we offer that. If anything comes up, drop us an email. If you've got a query or a question, we're still here. And that, to go back to your point at the start, is I don't want to be this faceless organization. I want people to feel that they've got a connection, and yeah, it's from a place of authenticity. So I do this work because I choose to. I don't have to do this work. I don't have to work in outplacement, and neither do the people who work with me. We could do other things, but it's important that I do this. So yeah,
I love it. I mean, June, you've been in part of Evolving HR from the very start. You were one of the original group that I reached out to when I had that idea of putting a PDF directory together. But it's because at the core of Evolving HR, it's always been about the people who are solving a problem that they experienced themselves and wanted to do it differently, and people that genuinely care about making a difference. And you embody that, and I love it. And so you're the only outplacement consultant, outplacement coach that we've ever had in Evolving HR, and I don't have any plans to change that. I recommend you to absolutely everybody. Anyone who's got a restructure going on, I'm like, you need to speak to June. Yeah. But no, I genuinely, what you're doing comes from a position of personal experience and empathy, and genuinely caring that people are going, are guided through a very difficult time in the most supportive way possible, which I think is fantastic. So
yeah. Oh, thank you, Kirsty. Yeah, and it's great to it's great to be around like-minded people within Evolving HR, and the fact that you are kind of, you're handpicking them all, aren't you, and just making sure that we all align with your values as well, which is important.
100%. Yeah, I mean, there's nobody who's part of Evolving as a provider that I haven't met with, or seen what they do, or heard about them. I mean, I approach people if I've heard about their reputation, but a lot of it is my own kind of background work. But yeah, it's important to me. I think there are enough faceless enterprises out there. If that's what people want, great. But I was always quite keen to showcase the people that are doing it differently. Bit of a more human approach. So where can people find you? I will put a website link in the description of this conversation when I post it out on YouTube. But where can people get hold of you? Where can they? Because you do webinars once a month as well, don't you? As well, 3 webinars.
So I hang out on LinkedIn, June Hogan. So it should be easy enough to find me on there. And yes, on the website, there are details of some free downloads to help anyone who's managing redundancies. And also I do a free monthly 1-hour lunch and learn session with a colleague where we talk about different aspects of managing redundancies, diving into things in lots of detail. And those are also posted on YouTube now as well. So yeah, LinkedIn's the main place to get in touch, but on the website there's lots of stuff on there. And I've also got a podcast which has been running now for almost a year, so that's exciting. And each of those episodes again is either with a guest, and we dive into different aspects of basically helping people to put people at the heart of the process when you're managing a redundancy situation.
Fantastic. I'll put all the links in the you know what it's called? I keep wanting to say description. You get a little box. I think it is just a description. I'll put it below for anybody who's watching this on YouTube. It's below. Yeah. June, thank you so much for joining me. This has been lovely. For anybody who's watching, do get in touch with June, do attend one of her free sessions, and also do subscribe to our YouTube channel, because I am rolling out so many of these conversations every Tuesday, and really enjoying all of them so far. I was saying to June, wasn't I, at the start before we went live, I just find everything that everyone does super interesting. So I've always got questions, and I always kind of nerd out about it a bit. So Oh, I know, it's fascinating to me, and like everybody's doing really cool stuff. So it's lovely to find out more and be able to share that with our audience as well. So thank you so much.
I've enjoyed nerding out with you as well. It's been great.
Thanks so much, June. Take care.